Hello. I'm just going to stand up because the fearless leader, Lily, who co-chaired this panel, is she around? Lily, are you around?
No, she's in the cyber.
Okay, so she claimed that I'm a sleepy audience by now. So you guys going to prove her wrong, right? Yeah? Huh? No? Come on, guys. Well, she told me that I had to wake you guys all up. So, God, this is going to be much harder than I thought. She might be right. Okay, I'm standing out here is because I'm also feeling a bit sleepy. Can you guys hear me well, right? So, okay, we have a great panel, I think. If they wake up as well. They are all telling me that they are yawning away. I'm really buying some time. I know that you guys are not prepared. They're great simply because I think they have, this topic is about startups and cooperation, right? And in some sense, the thesis is that startups should work with big corporates so that they can have a jump start, right? And, well, anyway, I have my own opinion about this, and I'll come to that shortly, but we have a great panel. Kilok, if you do not know him, the gentleman over there is probably the godfather of VC for startup now in Singapore. Well, he comes from the very, for the foreigners who are not familiar, Vertex is actually a grandchild of Temasek. So if you know Temasek, they are the builder of many of our greatest companies in Singapore, from Singapore Airlines to Singapore Telecom. That's Kilok. We have Amir, who is also from VC sector. He's from Israel, and but I understand is that he has been in the startup world before, and so I think he give us both perspectives. The reason I'm doing this now is that we could just skip this formality later on, and you know where they're coming from. On this side, our corporate. One of them, obviously, is Neal. Neal is from DBS. He's a Chief Innovation Officer. For those who are in Singapore, you realize that DBS has been very active now in promoting innovation, and for a big bank to take that step, I think is a wonderful contribution to our ecosystem. Hiroshi is from Orange. He claimed to me that none of you might know Orange, which of course we all know Orange. He also used to be involved in startups, so he has both the perspective of the corporation as well as startup. So the format is very simple. We're just going to have them spend a couple of minutes, introduce themselves, and talk about their views of how they see startups and corporate working. And we'll open up for some question and answer. And I have, if you guys do not ask any question, we will have an early session today. Ah, God, this is hard. Come on, guys. Okay, so I'm going to start very soon. But I want to start with an extreme view of this whole concept. There's an underpinning that startups and corporate should work together. And also there is almost an understanding, the thesis that in some sense, the way the question is phrased, a startup will benefit from working with a big corporation. So how about the antithesis, right? If you realize corporate has always had a hard time innovating. Not because of anything else. I mean, they have the talent, they have the resources. It's just that they are so good at what they are doing that it's sometimes actually hard to take a foreign DNA into their being. So does startup really need to work with a corporation? Is it an oxymoron? And if you really need to work with them, what are the lessons and how best could we work together so that it is beneficial from both sides? Strategic intent of a startup, obviously, is to gain huge customer access. And for the corporation, obviously, is to imbue some innovative and additional revenue streams or great ideas for the big corporation to be able to maybe move on to the next new development of what we call S-curve, right? So with that, I'm going to pass to Neal, who is from DBS. He's going to give us his, we'll go down this order, and then we'll come back for the question and answer. So thank you very much, and I know, please ask question, and there's the pigeonhole is available, so please do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to be back in a fest. I'd like to thank Singtel for all their free beer last night. That's why I'm probably a little tired, like all of you lot as well. What I'll do, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at DBS. I've been there a year. I actually had my own startup, a games company. We didn't call it a startup back then. We called it a small business. And I kind of exited that when I was 16. and I've done some other stuff as well. I've done, funnily enough, an aquarium company, which was quite fun. Now I'm at DBS. I'm not a banker, by the way. I've only been there a year. I've worked at tech companies and done other things before, so I quite a different lens on what to do. So what I want to talk through is really our journey at DBS. DBS is the development bank of Singapore. I did a talk yesterday on, we were founded to help develop the nation, and so we're continuing that now in the world of startup. So I'll talk you through, what's happened in the last year, how we're more focused on building businesses in Singapore, and also, working out different engagement models to work with startups. That some of them are quite non-traditional. So when I turned up at the bank a year ago, we weren't really doing too much. I think the only thing the bank had done before is sponsored an angel hack, which is, it's a first step. So we looked around, and I thought, there's a big change in our industry. We're being disrupted, and we are taking that very, very seriously. Been disrupted by people like Alibaba, Alipay, that's coming out of China. We've been disrupted by a lot of peer platforms. We've been disrupted by Apple Pay and people like that. And we know the other things are coming, the Googles, the Amazons, and the Facebook. And so we need to do it differently, and bankers can't do this, yeah? We need to reach outside. We need to bring outside in thinking. So what we did, the first thing we actually did an accelerator with Accenture up in Hong Kong. It was a very well-run accelerator. It was 10 banks were in there, so there's some competition, and 10 startups as well. And what that did, it started warming the bank up. It was the first accelerator to the concept of working with startups. So everything that my team does in the organization, it's not at all about inventing things. It's about how we create a culture of innovation and change inside the organization. So everything we do, we involve as much staff as we can. So in the accelerator in Hong Kong, we started building a mentor network. It was a bit nascent at the time, so we started getting the mentors through the accelerator, started getting the startups, got them into Singapore, pitching to executives, and then started this, the process of building that excitement of what a bank can do with the startup community. That has been quite successful. 2 of those startups are now in kind of POC stage at the moment, and I think they're going to add a lot of value to our organization. So we looked at that. That worked very well. I looked around the bank, and I had some other challenges that I needed to solve. One was, we were looking at doing a new training course. I do a lot of partnerships in the bank. Everything I do is a partnership, to learn about digital mindset. So I thought, actually, the best way to learn is to get them to act like a startup. So we started this big wave of hackathons. Not really hackathons, more makeathons, where we take our top talent in the bank. We went after not the most important people, well, actually, probably the most important people, but all different levels, so the top performers, all different geographies. We put them into teams. We paired them with startups. We took the big problems out of the bank, and we said, right, you've got 3 days to make a business to solve this problem. Half DBS staff, half startups. That went incredibly well. We put hundreds and hundreds of staff through that. We've engaged hundreds of people from the world of startup. But what we try to do, because obviously I've been in a startup as well, we're trying to be a responsible member of the startup community. So some of the things we did, we gave a minimum prize, so that every startup at least got some money for their time. We made the prizes quite big. And the idea is, I wanted those startups to keep working with the bank, and keep getting mentored. And the value for us as an organization was that the big thing was the culture exchange. That we got bankers start to really understand and think more like a startup. We taught them design thinking, human-centered design, lean startup experiments, and that's been great for us. We've run 4 of those now, and then we're looking at what do we do after? How do we keep that engagement going inside the organization? It was so well done that the CEO got involved in the last one, and so when they pitched their concepts to our problems, the CEO was the judge of that. So we did that as well. We've got another accelerator with Startup Bootcamp. We've just announced another one in Hong Kong with Ness. And now we're really, really accelerating. Our small business team built Business Class, which is an app. It's a community for startups to come and learn from each other. We bring in mentors to come and talk to them. We have a Bay Series event, and we get big speakers from the Bay Area come to Singapore and educate, well, talk to startups as well. So we're really trying to drive that and drive that engagement in Singapore. We released a product, a venture debt product. So for Series B and beyond startups, they can actually get access to funding without losing equity. So we're doing all this stuff now. The bank's very, very excited about how we can do it. You know, and some of the things I learned from that. So I sold to banks for many, many years. So when you're dealing with a corporate, tips for startups, yeah, do not send an executive an email asking them to meet tomorrow. Yeah. I have 50 meetings a week some weeks. Sending me emails like that just winds me up. These are just basic sales techniques, by the way. This isn't anything about startups or others, but startups maybe because they haven't, the ones who haven't worked in corporate, you know, our time's incredibly valuable. Better not to send that email. Better to wait till next time you're in town and send me an email, hey, can we meet up in a month? We're very, very busy people. Another thing when working with corporates, the average sales cycle of a solution in a corporate, especially in banking, is 6 months to a year. Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way it works. It's very, you know, you can't get away from that. You have to be patient, and there's all these checks. Corporate technology can be very ugly. So you've built some great, you know, amazing agile tech. The stuff in the corporate isn't. So when you start looking at POC and other stuff, accept the fact it's going to be hugely complex. It's a very, very difficult thing. For corporates, you know, when you look at a startup, look at 3 things. Look at the people, look at the product, and look at the access to customers. That's the 3 things I look at when I talk to a startup. Also, accept the fact they're not corporate. And I've just been told to stop. All right, thank you. I'll go back on the panel. Cheers.
They come and nag me. Hiroshi, please. 5 minutes, guys. Otherwise, we have no time for questions.
Yeah, you have to finish in 5 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a pitch contest.
These people don't follow instruction, guys.
Okay, I'm Hiroshi Nishikawa from Japan. I'm working at Orange. Orange is a French telecom operators. We have telecom operations in 30 countries, mainly in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we launched a Startup Accelerator program 2 years ago in San Francisco first. Then we expanded to Asia, actually, in Tokyo. Japan is the second country that we started the Accelerator program. And currently, we have this Accelerator program in 9 countries, wow. Including 3 in Asia, and Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. And I'm managing the program in those 3 countries. And why we launched this program? Orange is actually having working together with startups for many years. Like we acquired Dailymotion. We have been working with Deezer, music subscription services, for several years. But we decided to accelerate the open innovation more than before. The reason is that basically the most of innovation in ICT industry is created by startups. Why no telecom companies created Facebook, Google, or even Skype?
What's that?
So we really realized that innovation is developed by startups. So we need to more co-work together with the startups. That's why we started this program. And recently, our CEO announced the new strategic plan for 5 years plan. And in that plan, he mentioned that Orange will support 500 startups in next 5 years, mainly through the Orange Fab program. And I will talk a little bit about my experience about partnership with the startups. And I said we are really focusing on the cooperation with startups, but actually it's really, really difficult for startups to work with very big companies like Orange. So I suggest you that you don't expect too much big corporations. Yeah, it takes a very long time for negotiation. You have to talk with many people, this division, or this layer, or top management, blah, blah, blah. But after 6 months, nothing happened. That's a reality. So, but we really need startups. That's a
to slow them down.
Yeah. but another thing is that you have to keep contact with big corporation, even if they reject it once. And in many cases, like 1 year later or even 2 years later, they will come back to you and please present your solution again. So that happens because in big companies, time flies very slowly compared to startups. So for case of Orange, sometimes I promote startups from Asia to our headquarters in France. And in order to have just NDA, it takes 3 months for just NDA. So you have to be very, very patient to wait for feedback. So even if they say no, you have to be keeping contact with the startups. That's the second my suggestion. The last one would be you have to find the right person in big corporations. I said I'm really keen to partner with startups, but many people in big companies don't like startups because they think that the startups will take your job away. So you have to find the right person who are really interested in working with startups. That's a very important point. And even if one guy said, no, I'm not interested, but the other guy in other division or other countries may say, yes, okay, I'd like to work with you. So you have to be very patient. You have to wait along. That's my suggestion for the startups.
Thank you, Hiroshi. Thank you, Hiroshi. Kila, over to you.
Well, I think for startups to work with corporation, that boils down to 2 key words. One is what and what is when. What are you trying to achieve, and when is the best time to work with corporations?
Good point.
Timing is important. I think some of the panelists have mentioned not every time is the right time for corporation, especially the large one. So the best way to illustrate this is give you 2 examples. First example will be biosensors. Biosensor is a Singapore-listed company called doing drug or doing stand. The founder in the very early stage when he started the company, he decided that the best way for him to do this is to work with Terumo Japan. So he, in the very early stage startup, he signed exclusivity with Terumo, whereby he gave away the rights of Japan to Terumo in exchange for certain R&D cooperation from Terumo. And it turns out to be a blessing in disguise because in the later stage of his development, when he was trying to launch the product into Europe, Terumo, as a large corporation, had a lot more discipline in terms of drug discovery, in terms of stand development, is able to provide certain of this assistance. I would say, had Yoichi not done this with Terumo in the early stage, the company would not have been today. But it comes with a price, which is also the what question, because he has given away the exclusivity of Japan, which is the 2nd largest market in the world at that time. And then, of course, today largest is US, and then come by US, and Japan is number 4 now, next to after Europe. The second example will be closer to home, is a Grab Taxi. I'm sure everybody is familiar with this company. Grab Taxi, in its very early stage development, one of the key things is to get user and getting taxi driver. User is easy, everybody knows how to use it, but taxi driver is a problem because you need to have the data on all the time. In Southeast Asia, a lot of telco providers charge you very heavy usage for data in certain countries, in Malaysia and in certain countries. So in very early stage, that was a problem. So the founder was smart enough to realize this is the issue. So very early, he went up to some of the telco providers and said, look, can we work together? And then in exchange for exclusivity for almost 12 months for this particular telco provider, and then in exchange for that, he will launch he will promote that particular telco to that taxi driver, converting them for the taxi driver to that telco provider in those countries. Now, of course, that comes with a 12 months exclusivity. You cannot promote anybody else except for this telco provider. But doesn't matter. In these 12 months, you get a lot of taxi driver able to have the data app turned on, and then able to have more taxi driver with the app, and then as a result, passenger are able to get better apps. So the boils down is all ultimately for startup is a what and when, and what price are you willing to pay. And I think that there will be certain amount of exclusivity, and then corporation after all is making profit. They are not going to do this for free. So there's something you need to compromise ultimately.
Thank you, Kilo. Amir?
Hi, everyone. Maybe a show of hands, how many startups are here or people that want to start their startups? And how many people for corporates? And the rest, I guess, are what, freelancers? So I guess I'm going to share a bit of a view from both sides of the fence. I've been working both in corporates, working very closely with startups in corporates, but also worked in a startup, and today I'm on the investment side. So I've worked very closely here in Singapore with Singtel. I lived here for 4.5 years, working for another corporate named Amdocs. And one of my, I guess, key drivers or key exciting aspects was to try and bridge innovation between those two corporates, Amdocs and Singtel, together with startups. Coming from Israel, it was very trivial for me to go to Israel and try and find startups there and try to bring them here or bridge them with some needs that I've identified with Singtel. As part of that, we have also opened up together with Alan Liu, that was the CEO of GDL in Singtel. We opened up an innovation center called Life Labs in Israel, which I think is a very nice example on how a corporate is trying to stretch out beyond its comfort zone, like what Neal mentioned in terms of hackathon, et cetera, but also reaching out, trying to work with startups in the place where startups are. So trying to go towards the Valley, towards Israel, Ireland, other areas where there's a lot of innovation going on, making it much easier for startups to engage with those corporates. Because I guess one of the main challenges for a startup, A, is the distance, but B is the kind of bridge of culture between the way a startup works, as you mentioned, very fast cycles, lack of patience. So I fully agree with what Neal mentioned in terms of need for patience from startup versus corporate that has its own pace and has a lot of startups and vendors knocking up on its door. So it's really important to try and, I guess, from corporate perspective, to try and go to where startups are and not necessarily always be in their ivory tower waiting for startups to come to them. Today, on I guess, the other side of the fence, I'm both a director in a very large, I guess, corporate company called Gilat, but also a board member on a startup, a cybersecurity startup called Cyberint. And I guess you clearly see the differences when you are in a startup mode trying to grow very, very fast. It's very, very important to really focus and pick your targets. So as a startup, it's very tempting to go and kind of try to grab any opportunity you see along with any corporate. But as you might have heard, those take long time. So you cannot take too many bets as a startup working with too many corporates, at least at a very fast growth stage, because each such engagement at the very fast time would be probably 6 months, not less. So you really need to choose your battles. And what I see many startups fail at is actually trying to grab on every opportunity they have. They got some open door here and open door there, a friend there, and they grab too much too early. And I guess you need to choose this right corporate partner that you identify they're a very strong champion, somebody within the corporate that is really going to lead the certain engagement and is going to be responsible for it, is going to be actually awarded and get credited for the success of that startup. And as you mentioned, it's very hard sometimes to find those type of mindset people within a corporate because of fear or other barriers. And I guess on the other hand, it's really important to choose the right partner, like was mentioned, that helps you grow the company. So you need to choose a corporate that will help you grow your product. And I think a lot of startups have actually succeeded by working very closely with a corporate that helped them evolve their product or their service to make it more relevant, rather than sitting in your lab, your R&D team, and try to think what the world will need. So I think on that term, actually, corporates can be very, very, very helpful. Another very interesting initiative I'm supporting right now is a new platform to bridge between Asia and Israel, between startups here and startups in Israel. It's called Startup East, and it is an accelerator, basically, that is starting these days, bringing startups here to Asia and also helping entrepreneurs from Asia get a bit of the juice in Israel. And I guess that's another approach that startups can use, such accelerators like DBS has or Orange has, to try and even, I've been to Barclays a couple of weeks ago in London. They have a similar infrastructure of trying to kind of get a sense of what the corporate is in the corporate perimeter with some kind of cushion that helps them understand how to grow. So those type of accelerators, I think, are a very good example for startups on trying not to get hit or get mistakes early on.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for all the questions. I'm now on the pigeonhole. The questions are going to be displayed, I think, on the board. Yes, here we go. So keep them coming. I'm going to start with this question. Is this coming online? It's active now. There seems to be a great concern. I think there are 2 or 3 top questions around this area, discussing fear that the corporate might copy, steal the ideas from the startup. So I would love to have the opinion of the panels about, is this true or is this an illusion? You know, it's always invented by you and somebody else don't have the same idea. Or if it's true, then, or some part of it, how does one protect oneself, a startup in particular, in defending this likely leakage? All panels are required to answer. So where shall we start? We start the one on the hot seat, right?
Yes. I think we ran out of time, didn't we? It's very difficult. And it's not just startup. Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of selling in my life, and you know, you can take ideas to customers, and you know, sometimes they decide to implement that themselves. The most important thing is really deal with the right person, deal with the right corporate that you know you feel is credible, who will try and do the right thing and deal with the right person in that corporate is the best way to do that. Obviously, you can have things around IP protection and patents and that kind of stuff, but it's hard to enforce. You know, you only have to change an idea by so much, and then you're out of patent already. It's hard to prove. And on the flip side, I mean, I work for MasterCard Labs, and we'd invented something like 150 prototypes of new inventions. And so many times startups have come to us, and it's in our catalog, and we'd actually have to say to them, we just want to let you know, we've got this in our catalog here. This is something we've had for a while. So it's not so cut and dried as you think. It's not just about startups and corporates. It's actually big companies as well. But the best thing is just try and deal with someone you trust that's going to do the right thing for you and look after your interests.
Anybody? Just go ahead.
Okay. I think you don't need to fear so much about the copying things, because as I said, big companies are usually very slow. And if your idea is copied by big companies, and if you fail, you will never succeed anyway.
Yeah, it's a bad idea to start with.
Okay, Kila?
So I think it depends on what sector you're talking about. But generally, the big corporation, you have to be careful. Although you say the big corporation can never copy fast enough, you must always be mindful. There are certain category of companies in this part of the world, which I don't want to go into it, because you know, everybody know that these have a propensity to adopt the idea. So these guys, this kind of company, you should always avoid to call them first. You call them when you absolutely have no choice. There are certain corporations that are very high standard, very high in category. You know that you share something with them, they were not going to do something that is considered to be wrong. The certain corporation is just absolutely a copycat every day. So then you try to avoid them as early as possible. But sometimes you have no choice but to go with them. Then in that case, you have to be mindful in your first interaction what to disclose, what not to disclose, and because this is something that you always have to figure out. And because there's a certain point in line that once you cross over and you disclose it to them, that's it, and then there's no way to take it back. So it all depends.
Yeah, I tend to concur. I think everything depends. So I would not, probably as a start, would not go and try to work with Google as a first corporate, or with Facebook as a first corporate, but definitely working with a telco or with an insurance company or with a bank that have, I guess, less tendency to copy and also have a more tendency to outsource and are less looking to do everything in-house and looking to actually rely on innovative partners. So choosing the right corporate, I guess that's the key.
Okay, thank you very much. To the next question, but before I do that, Kilok made a point about when and what, but I felt that maybe it's also the owners on the startup to really look for true partnership. I mean, it might be a big corporation, right? You got to bring something to the table to play. So I think the Grab Taxi thing about driving traffic to the telco, I think these are substantial and clear. But I feel that sometimes when a startup approach a corporation, is kind of looking for a handout of sort. But I think the owners should be on the startup to think about deeply, you know, what can you bring to the table? And I think the more you can bring on the table, the likelier the partnership is going to be sustainable. Next question has a greatest vote. What are big corporations looking for in a startup when considering a partnership? I guess in a broader context, it's kind of a hard question, I think. But what would you guys be looking for when a startup comes to you, I guess? And what would you advise, what type of startup to go to a corporation? I mean, under what situation that you think is absolutely necessary? I mean, we obviously know that there's a price to pay in working at a big corporation.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, you know, 3 things. I look at the people. We might acquire them, the product or the IP that actually fills a pain point. That's the most important thing. I said, one tip for the audience, if you want to sell to corporates, learn something called solution selling. It's the most valuable thing I ever learned. It really helps you think about how you structure a pitch and who you're sitting with and how to sell and how to close deals. And, you know, if you can bring me eyeballs, customers, we're in the digital transformation. You can come to me and say, hey, I can connect you with, you know, 20 million potential customers in the future if you give us distribution. And that probably is one of the most single important things we're looking at the moment. As you go through the cycle, we start looking at features, what features you got, basic sales, and then it goes into a cycle of price. As you're closing the deal, it's all about risk. And startups tend to, you know, are seen as having more risk because they're new and fresh and that kind of thing. So just be aware of that as you go through. How can you reduce that perception of risk towards the end of the sales cycle?
Okay, Kilo?
No, I think for startup, you have to do your homework because before you approach Orange or DBS or any other people, you need to do your homework. You need to understand what are their pain points. You can't just go and tell DBS, I'm going to do this and that, this one and that, whatever that is. But if this is not something that's important to them, they won't bother. So you have to do your homework, understand where they are, and usually you can find people who have some understanding of what their business issues and try to understand where is their pain points. And then when you make a proposition to them, have to be somewhere relevant to their business. Because if it's not, they're not going to be paying attention to it. So you have to do your homework. Without doing your homework, you can just go and send an email to Neal and say, I would like to have a meeting with you. But unless you are very clear what is his pain points, he will not give you the attention at all.
Yeah, I think working with a startup is always a risk for a corporate. And mitigating it is through a very strong team, people that the person actually engaging them can rely on. They have a good backing, maybe financial backing is something that I would say corporates are looking at. And for sure, having the innovative value that they cannot get anywhere else.
Great. I'm going to jump some question and go to the one that I think is kind of interesting. There seems to be an aspirational statement among corporations say, hey guys, we're going to take the DNA of a startup and we're going to help the corporate innovate, right? And I think that's a question that received quite a number of votes. I'd like to kind of pose this question. Is it real? I mean, is this truly even it just aspirational, or is it realistically one could expect a startup that will not be lost inside a big corporation, and would there be a kind of a disillusional effect after a while that you don't really think that startups could be as helpful as you think? Neal, you're on the hot seat today.
Thanks for that. Yeah, old time's up. No, absolutely. Yeah, you see it all the time. Not even with startups. Gigantic corporates buy smaller corporates. The culture gets destroyed, and you see that a lot happening anyway. The important thing I create. When we try and it's not even startups. It's also people. I bring in a lot of mavericks, a lot of kind of innovators, creating a safe place for them, having a separate culture inside the organization where they can live, and thrive. But startups can absolutely help corporate innovate. We're getting so many startups working with us and really changing our culture, but there needs to be a structure at the corporate. If there's no structure to add that kind of level of protection to protect and grow the culture, absolutely be subsumed. What's the phrase, culture triumphs strategy. And unfortunately, that is because culture is so powerful.
Have you guys seen it at work that actually happened? A startup kind of influence a big corporation?
But it's just a contradiction,
Yeah.
The whole idea about startup actually is, frankly, is to eat the corporation lunch, right? Because the whole idea is that you are trying to do something that the incumbents are not doing. So you have to figure out when is the right time, and what is the time that whatever you're doing that is annoying enough for the corporations to acquire you. So that's always that point, So it's never easy. Yeah, it's never easy. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, most M&As fail. That's the reality. Yeah. So most M&As by large corporates acquiring small companies, most of them fail, either because lack of identity alignment, either because of some processes that kill the acquired company. At least in Amdocs, the company I work for, the company actually grew through acquisitions.
Yeah.
And I think there were a lot of very bad acquisitions in terms of killing the vibe of the startup and the innovation, companies that dealt with recommendation and eroded through the company throughout the years. But there also have been some very successful acquisitions that Amdocs has done. One of them, for example, acquisition of a CRM company, which was not a startup, but I would say a more mature company, which helped pivot the entire company to a much larger space. So I think, again, if an M&A is driven from driving the company towards the direction that specific startup or that specific innovation is bringing into the company, it's probably more likely to be successful. But if it is just to be integrated within a large behemoth like IBM or Google even, or Accenture, et cetera, then it's probably bound to fail.
Yeah. My hypothesis is that if you expect a startup to change a culture, you have a problem bigger than absorbing a startup.
You can't buy a
Obviously,
culture.
you have a problem now.
You cannot buy a culture,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
You
you
cannot
can't-
change your DNA.
You can't change a culture either. You can only evolve it.
Yes.
You are where you are, and you have to evolve it over time. That is it.
Okay, the next one is really interesting. Okay, Jay. Oh, they are chasing me away 1 minute, but I will take this last one. Okay. Get away, please. Pigeonhole, go away. Okay, the last question is this. Startups, you work in a big corporation, is hard. So go direct to the consumer, or one big guy, where do you place your bet? I guess if you have a choice, what is your view? And I think it's an interesting question. Shall I start on the left this time?
As everything in life, it all depends. It depends what your product is and what your service is and what's your business case. I think there are a lot of merits of working with corporates, as I mentioned before, in terms of really learning what the market needs and working with a partner that can help you evolve your product or help you evolve your service. So corporates, I think, are perfect fit for that. That's something that you will not get from mass consumer market. So for mass consumer market, it's mainly kind of try and error type of activity, but you will not have this partner that helps you evolve. So I think there are a lot of benefits to working actually with a corporate. On the other hand, as we mentioned before, it's a patience, long cycle, So it depends if you are up for it.
Okay. Kilo?
Well said.
So if you're forced in a corner, you will take a choice between going for it or going to a partner. I guess this issue is not about 0 or 1. It's about, hey guys, do I go direct to the masses or go to a partner who is a big guy to go after the masses?
I mean, it depends on your product as well. There's a quote, probably wrong, because there's lots of wrong quotes about Albert Einstein. He was being interviewed, and he said, you know, he's got a book. It was one of his first books, and he said, journalist said, hey, Albert, how many copies of this book do you need to sell to be famous and successful? He goes, 1. Journalist goes, oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. How many? He goes, 1. I just need to sell it to Max Planck. He will tell everyone I'll be famous. Sometimes it's good just to sell it to one big thing, but it depends on your product.
Okay, fair. Hiroshi, any view on this?
Maybe if I add something, maybe it's important to work with who you work with, because in the same big companies, there are a lot of type of people, and both of you and your counterpart in big company have the same vision or same concept. It will be maybe more chance to succeed. So I think it really depends on who you work with as well. Yeah.
There was some question about what kind of resources corporate like DBS and Orange could provide to the startups. I would take it that you guys will approach them directly. So it leaves me now, join me to thank the panelists for spending the time with us, and please continue the interaction, and thank you for your patience and attention.